Good morning, good morning, good morning. Wishing everyone a very, very good morning today. We are the Center for Spiritual Living, Midtown, and here all are welcome. So we are so happy to have everyone here today. I do want to just give a shout out to the May graduates from the kindergarten to the middle school to high school to the colleges as they began their life journey looking for that silver lining in their life. So, quite a milestone, quite an accomplishment. So, congratulations to you. I also want to just say congratulations, or maybe I should say thank you to our Advanced Blue and Diego. They do an amazing job, guys, when it comes with the technology. This technology is forever changing. And I tell you, these guys be on top of it, making us look great. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, our volunteers, we do this, guys, because of you guys. So all of us working together, come together to make a difference. We absolutely do need your support, and we absolutely are thankful and grateful. The whole board is volunteer, the service is volunteer, the practitioners volunteers. So we are in gratitude to have such wonderful people, good people coming in to say, hey, we believe in what you do. And of course, us coming together and believing together makes it all come together. So I would like for us to welcome our guest speaker today, Reverend Ron Fox. Guys, he's dynamic. I tell you, he is dynamic. And he will bring us the message today, finding the silver lining. So I can't wait to hear his perspective on that and how we can and do go about finding our silver lining. So I would like for you guys to join me in the declaration of principles.
I believe
I
believe in one God,
one absolute power and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love
and creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life
and the immortality of the individual soul,
forever unfolding.
I believe
in the eternal goodness,
the eternal goodness of God,
the eternal loving kindness,
and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Okay, guys, this is who we are. This is our foundation. So today, the message is finding the silver lining. So when I was researching, going back and looking on my journey on how I developed finding the silver lining, one of the thoughts that Ernest Holmes shared, of course, this is years ago, guys, really years ago, but it came back to me, and the thought is creative, and by thinking, we create our own experiences. Make that quote again. Thought is creative, and by thinking, we create our own experiences. As most of you know, I was raised a Catholic, and before coming here to the Science of Mind teaching, all of my experiences had been created by other people. My experiences have been created by my family, by my school, by my church, and let's not forget the TV. Back in the day, we watched the TV. So the TV influenced a lot of our thinking at that time, a lot of our thought process. But being that was all that I knew, I had no idea that my mind was being programmed, my mind was being influenced, and it was my mind creating my experiences in life. And it was through the teachings here at the Science of Mind, I began to learn that I had choices about those thoughts that were being shared, that were being influenced. Some of the influence was good, some of the thoughts were good, some were not. And of course, when you have conflicting thoughts, it brings about confusion. And being in a state of conflict is just not a good thing. So, taking the classes, I was able to learn about my being in charge of my own experience. And that was, I gotta say, guys, one of the best freeing thoughts that I had. One of the reasons being, I could determine what experience I was going to have in my own life. The thought of oneness came early on for me in my teaching here at the Science of Mind. That thought of oneness gave me so much peace. And the reason being, as you guys know, I'm a people person versus a task person. But the thought of oneness is what allowed me to continue to be with people, because people, as they say, what's your love language? People, people, people. So having the thought of oneness gave me the way, it was the tool that allowed me to stay connected with people by way of spirit. So regardless of how they individually express themselves, it was in spirit we remain one, in oneness. We remain connected in the oneness. We remain connected in the spirit. And that was such a wonderful thought simply for me. So it was through this idea of the oneness, through this concept of the oneness, I found the silver lining for me. So I ask the question, what is your silver lining? So now, practitioners or the spiritual leaders within the centers across the country, they are in support of the ministers. I am the practitioner today. My name is Barbara Guillory. And what I'm going to do is do a treatment. And I've often heard our board president always say that the Science of Mind treatment practitioner is one of the ways that we can contribute. So I really, really feel great in being a practitioner and being able to make the contribution as a practitioner. So we will focus on the thought of peace. The treatment is to bring into alignment your mind in alignment with the one mind. As you all know, throughout our day-to-day living, we tend to have many, many, many thoughts. Some are in alignment, some are not. However, the tool of treatment allows us to align our minds once more with the one mind. So there is a oneness as we center ourselves. We know and understand there is a oneness, and this oneness is the universal oneness from which all things are. There is just the one mind. There is just the one peace. There is just the one joy. There is just the oneness in and of itself. And it is this wonderful idea of the oneness that I am a creation of. It is this oneness that I come to know, that I come to resonate with, that I come to believe in. It is this idea of oneness that I can know through my own experience. It is there for my experience. And it is this experience with the oneness as a co-creator. I can experience oneness in all that I do, in all that I say, in all that I hear. There is the idea of the oneness. The idea of the oneness is what allows me to feel and experience oneness in my existence, oneness in my being, oneness in my life. It is this idea of the oneness as the co-creator. I offer up the experience of oneness to each and every one in the world. I offer the idea of the oneness to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. It is this idea of oneness that expands my experience of the oneness in my personal life. It is this knowledge that I am grateful for. It is this knowledge that I am thankful for. It is this knowledge I give thanks for. And for this, I am grateful. And so it is. So today, our guest speaker, let me also just say thank you to Maya and Judy. They do an outstanding job in making sure we have the best speakers out there. And today, they delivered again. Today, our guest speaker is the loving Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. He has been a motivational speaker and workshop facilitator for over 25 years. He has had a long and successful career as a human resource executive, working for such companies as General Foods, Glasgow, SmithKline, Union, Martell Toys. Ron also opened a very successful search firm in Southern California. Ron is also an ordained minister with the Center of Spiritual Living, and he is a gifted speaker and published author. His inspirational style, coupled with a keen sense of humor, make him a favorite with audience everywhere he has spoken. In 2018, the Center for Spiritual Living honored him by designating him a Doctor of Divinity. And in 2019, he was awarded the Meritorious Minister Award for his outstanding service. He resides in Port St. John, Florida, with his wife, Becky, who is an artist and graphic designer, as well as a CSL practitioner. Reverend Ron is available for speaking and workshop presentations, and he can be reached at reverendronfox@gmail.com. So if you guys would help me welcome loving Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. Take it away.
Thank you, Barbara. That was a great introduction. So I'm really glad to be back here again. I had a really good time the last time I spoke here, and I'm looking forward to today. And I just want to say that when we get to the Q&A period, we're going to have a special guest along with me. So Barbara mentioned a couple of times that my topic today is finding the silver lining. And I want to begin with a quote from a lady named Estelle Frankel. And she wrote a book called Sacred Therapy. And she wrote, ultimately, the whole and the broken live side by side in us all. So, all of us are going to experience failure sometime in our life. Businesses fail, relationships fail, you don't make the high school team you wanted to, you don't get the promotion that you were hoping for. And Rabbi Harold Kushner asks the question, what do we do when our dream doesn't come true? What do we do when a door closes in our face? How do we find the will to go on? And the question isn't, can I live a life without any rejection and failure? Because you can't. The question is, how do I respond? Will I respond with envy, with anger, and with bitterness and self-doubt? Or will I respond with resilience and wisdom? Just because you failed at something doesn't mean you're a failure as a human being. Our worth is determined by our compassion, by our humanity, and by the courage to keep on going. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I'm speaking about. Rabbi Pesach Krauss lost a leg when he was a young boy. When he grew up and got married, his wife died of brain cancer. And he wrote a book called Coping with Grief, Loss, and Change. And he became a chaplain at a hospital. And in his book, he wrote, each of us must find our special meaning in our own way. And he said it's interesting to him that many patients in hospitals get their answers. Let me give you two examples of what he means. He wrote about one man who was a really successful businessman. Well, again, these two people are patients in hospitals. And this fellow was really successful. And he said to the rabbi, none of that means anything to me anymore. I sacrificed my wife and I sacrificed my children. Now I'm reborn. And what I know is that every day is sacred and every day is precious. One of the other patients he wrote about was a teenage boy who had just undergone a very painful bone marrow transplant. And this young guy wrote, I've learned a lot. I've matured. Now I know who I am and I know what I want in life. And let me read one more thing the rabbi wrote. The hard knocks of life can lead to the revealing of doors and the opening of new possibilities. Barbara spoke about Ernest Holmes. Let me tell you some things Ernest Holmes wrote. He said, no matter what has gone on in our life, no matter how many times we may have failed, we can undo it. We can undo lifelong habits. And just like Barbara said, do you know what he said, how we can do it? By changing our thinking. We can consciously change lifelong habits of wrong thinking and change what life is showing us. It might not happen in a day. It might not happen in a week. It might not happen in a year. And it might not happen in a month or a year. But we can change these habits if we stick with them, and we can turn our life around. He said to us, life offers us hope by telling us there is a voice within us that will always lead us to our good. Let me read a quote from what he said. There's an intuition in you which already knows that you are one with good and that your destiny is certain. And you must listen to this intuition, for it's the voice of God in you. And you know, all of us are affected by change. And when we suffer a loss that's permanent, our life changes. And so often, when one door is closed in our life, another one opens. But we focus so much on the door that's closed, we don't see the one that's open. And Reverend Terry Cole Whitaker gives us a wonderful and humorous example of this. So she writes about an experiment that scientists conducted. They took rats and put a rat in a maze, and there was cheese in the maze. And after the rat gets in the maze, by using its nose and trial and error, it eventually finds the cheese. They take it out, they put it back, and the second time they put it in, it finds the cheese a little quicker. They take it out again, and the third time they put it in, boom, it goes right to the cheese. And then they take it out and they move the cheese. They put the rat back, and once again, by using its nose and trial and error, it finds the cheese again. Terry says that human beings are the only species that continues to go back to the same place over and over again and looks up at the sky and says, "Where the hell is my cheese?" You know, we may miss the cheese that's available to us if we keep going back to the old place and we keep doing things the old way. Rachel Remen is a doctor, and in one of her books, she writes about a time when she was a young girl, and her mom used to keep a jigsaw puzzle, a big jigsaw puzzle, in the entry of their home. And her mom would work on it, and she would invite guests that came in to do it if they chose. And I had never heard of anybody doing this until the last time my wife and I went to visit my daughter, and she had one there. And my wife would sit down and work with her on it periodically. Well, now remember, Rachel wrote this when she was a young girl, or about when she was a young girl. And she said some of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle were bright and cheery, and she liked them. And some of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle to her were dark and foreboding, and she didn't like them. So she took those pieces and she hid them under the pillows of her mother's sofa. Well, of course, eventually her mother gets to the end of the puzzle and she sees that there are pieces missing. And she says, Rachel, do you have the pieces? And Rachel gives them to her. And she watches as her mother puts the pieces together. And she's astounded at what the final puzzle looks like. And she realized that it wasn't only the bright and cheery pieces that made the puzzle look so beautiful, but it was the dark and foreboding ones. They had a hand in that. And she said, the dark pieces in our life are part of a bigger picture. And we never know what the pieces will look like ahead of time. But sometimes, out of loss, out of grief, and out of pain, meaning will emerge. And she wrote that she sees joy in a different way now. She has a willingness to accept the whole of what life offers her, and she doesn't hold back because it doesn't show her what she was hoping for. One of her patients said to her, you know, when you're walking on thin ice, you might as well dance. I love that. So I want to read to you something that Ernest Holmes wrote in the book, This Thing Called You. He said, when thoughts of fear or discouragement assail you, turn to them quietly and say, you have no place in me. There is nothing in me that can entertain thoughts of negation or doubt. I refuse to admit them. I know that my word casts out fear and doubt. It converts fear into faith. I know there is nothing in the universe that wishes me ill. There are no negative forces operating around, in, or through me. There is but one mind, which is my mind. This true mind within me has never received an image of doubt. The God mind within me only entertains that which is perfect. So I want to tell you, I am not a Bible expert. However, I did read that the most used expression in the New Testament is be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now, the people that wrote that were being arrested, they were being persecuted, they were being tortured, and they were being murdered. So they could not possibly have meant be not afraid, because nothing bad is ever going to happen to you. What they must have meant was be not afraid, and remember, when you're touched by sorrow or grief or illness or harm, there is something within us, a spirit that will bear us up, that will hold us up, and that will keep us strong. No matter how we are hurt, our divine nature will bear the weight of it, will help us bear the weight of it. You know, when we go through a dark night of the soul, if we ignore it, it gets worse. Healing comes when we face it and learn how to work with it. And when we meet a dark night of the soul head on, we often emerge stronger and more grounded. And sometimes in life, the worst thing that happens to us turns out to be the best thing. James Costello was wounded in the Boston Marathon bombing, which I think took place in 2013. And it was the worst thing you could imagine that ever happened to him. And yet, he said he wouldn't change that if he could. And do you know why? He married one of his nurses. So I want to tell you something personal about me. In the late 80s, I was living in Maine. I was married and I had 3 children. And I found out my wife was being unfaithful. It threw me like I had never been thrown. I was confused. I was scared. I was in fear. What's going to happen to me? What will I ever see my children? What's going to happen to me financially? And it was way before I found religious science, so I didn't have that to lean on. But what got me through, in fact, let me tell you, when I went, a friend of mine who was an attorney sent me to his attorney, and that attorney said, "You are so hurting and confused. I don't want your case until you go to a friend of mine who's a psychologist and get some counseling." So I did that. And my best friend, when I called him and told him, said, "What are you doing this weekend?" "I'm coming to be with you." And one of my other friends came over and I told him what was going on. He put his arms around me and he held me and he whispered in my ear, "Don't worry, Ron. We'll get through this. Not you'll get through this. We'll get through this." Years later, a few years, 5, 6 years later, an angel came into my life and I got married. And we've been married 33 years. And after we were married a few years, my daughter and I were talking. And I said to her, "You know, Meredith, if somehow I could magically go back and change that time, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it because I got through it and I found some strength and I like where my life is and I like where I am." That's when the worst thing in our life can turn out to be the best thing in our life. And what are some things that obstacles can do, some positive things they can do for us? They can show us who we really are. And I used to tell my congregants all the time, "You know who you are? You're a spiritual powerhouse. You might not know it now, but I'm going to help you learn it. You are a spiritual powerhouse because the divine presence of spirit is within you. And when you make the decision to go within and touch that divine presence and invite it in your life, you're unstoppable. You know, obstacles can make us tougher, and they can also show us what's important to us and what's important in our life. You and I can't always control what events happen in our life, but we can control our attitude and how we respond. So be willing to bet on yourself. And I want to close with something from the book Simple Truths by one of my favorite authors, Kent Nerbuhr. And he writes, "The world is a great and mysterious place. It contains within it all the possibilities that our hearts can conceive. If we incline our hearts towards the darkness, we will see darkness. If we incline our life towards the light, we will see the light. Life is but a dream we renew each day. It is up to us to infuse this dream with light and to cultivate as best we can the ways and habits of love." Thank you for inviting me here. God bless you. Have a great week. And I'll see you in a few minutes on the Q&A. Bye now.
Unmute myself. There we go. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. That was an awesome talk this morning. And yeah, how we can change. And we appreciate every one of you for coming and listening, whether you're doing it currently live or later, YouTube, Facebook, or on our podcast. And to support this ministry as we go forth and bring you these wonderful ministers. You can donate online at cslmidtown.org/donate or scan the QR code on the screen. Then say with me now our affirmation of prosperity. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow. And all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. And now I turn it over to our board president, Lee Huffman, for some announcements.
Good morning. What a wonderful service. Thank you, Vance. Thank you, Reverend Fox. It was a great talk. Barbara, just as always, fantastic. I want to thank everybody, Diego, and everybody that gets these wonderful speakers to come and get online with us. Please, as Vance said, give not just with your money, although we could use that, but with your prayers and attendance and by sharing this center on social media and inviting friends and family to come join us. We are still looking for members to participate in the senior minister selection team and the co-creation workshop that we'll do as soon as we get that team assembled. We are interested if you're interested in creating a future for CSL Midtown, please send your name and contact information to president@cslmidtown.org. Next Sunday at 10 o'clock, we have the study group, and it's fantastic. It's by Zoom, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Then again, service tomorrow or next Sunday from 11 to 12. The discussion will continue on good to great to grand and the power of vision. Our guest minister will be Reverend Dr. Michelle Whittington, and her talk will be Many Hands, One Heart, which is a beautiful theme that I've seen at CSL for many years. And Norma will be our practitioner for that Sunday. So fantastic. You all join us. And now you can join us by going to cslmidtown.org, going down a couple times on the screen to the Zoom, clicking on that and noting the number underneath that will allow you to get in and have the talk with Reverend Fox and others at the center. So please join me as we have our affirmation of life. I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth in the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything that I need to create a life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the spirit of life that lives through me, and so it is.
There is a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it.